Death, the inevitability that comes with life. Everything that comes into being always reaches an end. You, me, the birds in the trees, and the earth itself. To deal with this inevitability, many people turn to religion to help calm their fears and anxieties. Some turn to science, and some never come to accept their destined fate. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is a game focused on the idea of defeatism and trying to combat it however you can. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask utilizes rhetoric to create an atmosphere of pessimism, defeatism, and fatalism when facing a cataclysmic situation, but then demonstrates the good that can be found within those around us. Within Majora's Mask, the player takes control of Link, who ends up in the land of Termina after chasing Skull Kid, the main antagonist of the piece, after Skull Kid steals Link's Ocarina of Time, an instrument that allows the user to manipulate time. Once in the land of Termina, Link is turned into a Deku, a shrub-like creature by the Skull Kid and his usage of Majora's Mask, a mask that bestows an evil and wicked power to its wearer. Once in the land of Termina, Link finds himself realizing that he has only 3 days until the moon crashes into Termina, killing all those who reside there. At the end of the 3rd day, Link finds himself encountering Skull Kid again, finding out that Majora's Mask is the reason for the moon crashing into Termina. Within this confrontation, Link is able to get his Ocarina of Time back and travel back to the first day of the 3-day cycle where, with help, he is transformed back into a human. This is where the game opens up and allows the player to explore Termina, as the player now has the ability to travel back to the beginning of the 3-day cycle whenever they want. The main objective at this point is to travel across the 4 regions across Termina and awaken the 4 guardians that reside there, and with their help, prevent the moon from falling. Within each region, the player meets and encounters the locals of each realm. Each region, the Southern Swamp, where the Dekus reside, the Mountain Swamp, where the Gorons reside, the Great Bay, where the Zoras reside, and Ikana Canyon, where the dead reside, have problems that Link needs to help resolve. The goals that the player strives for take the forms of a main objective revolving around entering a temple and awakening the local guardian, and side quests that involve Link talking to the inhabitants and helping them with their problems. This is where Majora's Mask puts most of its effort into using rhetoric and developing its world and characters. Due to being an interactive medium, the player can more closely relate to the characters and situations presented, as the player themselves has to make the decisions to help those around Link. You aren't penalized for not helping those in need, but it significantly helps you if you go out of your way to do so. Some of these rewards range from masks that grant new powers to the player, money that can be used to purchase helpful items, or even heart pieces which can help extend the player's life bar. These characters also have their own schedules that they follow within the 3 days that the player has to take into account to do some of the side quests. Many of these side quests are lengthy and tedious, but are incredible due to how fulfilling it is to help the individuals and their problems. A perfect example of this is Anju and Keife, the troubled couple. This side quest takes a whole 3-day cycle to complete and requires the player to help Anju and Keife reunite after Skull Kid changed Keife into a child that retains his adult memories. As a result of Skull Kid's actions, Keife ran away from his fiancée, Anju, as he was fearful of what she would think of his altered appearance. The side quest begins with the player watching Anju receive a letter posted from Keife, with Anju asking the player to give a letter from her to Keife. After this, the player then speaks with Keife as he asks the player to help give Anju a pendant symbolizing their love for one another and how everlasting it is. Keife also asks the player to help him retrieve the Sun Mask, a mask that was stolen from him, as Keife promised Anju that he would return to her with it. The player then makes their way to Ikana Canyon with Keife and help him retrieve the mask. On the final day, the player is required, with a minute and a half before the moon falls, to meet with Anju and Keife one more time where they finally reunite. Anju takes her moon mask and Keife takes his sun mask, and they put them together, creating the couple's mask, with the game calling it a sign of 2 people dedicating their lives to each other by creating 2 wedding masks and combining them to form the mask, a ritual which signified that 2 people are now a couple. This side quest plays into the idea of good being able to be found within poor circumstances. Throughout the side quest, Keife is a child, someone not fit to traditionally marry. However, through the help of the player and their direct involvement, Keife can find the strength within himself to reunite with his love, Anju. Again, this all occurs with the world coming to an end around them, a prime example of the bittersweetness that can be found within cataclysmic situations. This is how Majora's Mask uses pathos within itself. It builds up a world-ending event, but shows the human side of what an event could look like for different people. For Anju and Keife, it is them finally reuniting and embracing each other as the world around them is coming to a close. The game presents itself as the player having to overcome insurmountable odds, as stated previously. The player is presented with the situation of needing to stop someone wielding a mask that can bring the moon down, turn adults into children, and turn children into other species entirely, a situation that seems impossible to try and even combat. The game uses its music and ever-present moon falling closer and closer in conjunction with all of those that the player meets to create this atmosphere. As touched on earlier, there are many side quests that involve the player helping people overcome their personal hardships and help calm them before their inevitable demise. However, the main quests have a bit more sustenance than this. For example, within the mountain village, the player encounters the Goron species, a species known for their immense strength, size, and their consumption of rocks. Within other Zelda games, they traditionally live in the hottest areas within the game, temperature-wise, usually volcanoes. However, Majora's Mask puts them in the coldest environment possible, snow-capped mountains. The reason for their climate being so cold is, as you might be able to guess, due to the Skull Kid inverting what their temperature should be. This caused the Goron hero, Dorami III, to try and venture out and try to fix whatever caused their climate change. Sadly, as a result, Dorami loses his life and, as a ghost, meets the player lamenting about how he's leaving his race behind and that he could not do enough for them. This is one of the most powerful characters within the game, physically, but also through his qualities too. He was a hero of his people, someone who had already done more than enough for them, but cannot bring himself to forgive himself for not doing more. This is a feeling that is not just limited to a wacky situation like this, as the feeling of being unworthy, the feeling of not being satisfactory, the feeling of not being enough. This is something that transcends media and provides a link, pun intended, to the player. This appeal through his characteristics and who he is a feeling that I can respect and understand. The usage of ethos through Dorami III adds a depth to the world that was unknown to the player before. It provides bravado for Dorami and his ambition. It allowed for a connection through how Dorami feels in leaving others behind and being considered a disappointment. It allows us to understand who Dorami is at his core, and it is a feeling that helped me connect to the game and care for those I was helping in the game. I wanted to help the Gorons. I wanted to help Dorami heal from his pain. This game was released on April 27th, 2000, and logically, was developed in the late 90s. Due to this, it would not be a massive stretch to draw comparisons between the moon crashing into Termina and the Y2K bug that was all the hype in 1999. Both were impending dooms that people were fearful were going to end the world. Within both situations, there are people who denied the existence of the problem actually being a problem, and those who vehemently believed in the disaster to occur. Kairos is used within Majora's Mask, as this can also be seen as a carnival is being prepared for in Clocktown, the central hub, for what was to occur at the very end of the third day, when the moon is set to crash in Termina. For the carnival, fireworks are prepared, the clock tower drops down and opens up, allowing the player to access it, and even milk, the equivalent of alcohol within this universe, is drunk aplenty prior to the event is set to begin. These are all extremely close, if not borderline copying Western New Year's Eve parties, having a ball drop for the world to see, fireworks shut off left, right, and center, and alcohol drink. With this knowledge in mind, it helps bring the player back into what that feeling of pure dread of the unknown future is like, as the game uses Kairos to provide this urgency, this necessity to hurry to do what can be done, to have to face what is possibly nothing, but also possibly a cataclysmic world-ending disaster. This can even be seen within the advertising for the game prior to its release. A major focus of the advertising is the moon crashing and a player, or Link, fighting to do what they can to save the day, to prevent this natural disaster. Some ads even demonstrate the hopelessness seen, however, show the world believing in the player, that they will be able to save them, that they will be able to stop the moon, that the indomitable human spirit will conquer over the indifferent cruelty of the universe.
Radio Zelda is now transmitting.
Oh, he's playing. He's playing, I knew it.
Just a reminder, 72 hours remaining until the end of the world.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
Local time 12:30, and if you're listening,
He's gonna make it. I know he's gonna make it.
I'm not sure how to say this, but there's just not a lot of time left.
You think he's gonna make it?
I hope so.
And hey, listen, kid, I don't know if you can hear me, but you're all we've got. So good luck. Play hard. Win this one, will you?
Though I walk through the valley of death, I shall fear no evil.
You've been tuned in to Radio Zelda.
Fear no evil. Help me.
Goodbye.
This is why moments of feeling like my desire to help the people of Termina paying off feels so great. At the end of the game, the player encounters Majora's Mask one more time as it takes the form of hellish demons that the player must vanquish. At this point, the player can fight them normally, even if it is a difficult bout. However, if the player went out of their way to help all the people in Termina, they will not only have a maxed out health bar and magic bar, but also have access to the strongest mask within the game, the Fierce Deity Mask. This mask turns Link into a figure that is similar to his own, wielding a massive sword as well. This mask can only be obtained by collecting all of the masks within the game, with even the game stating it is said to possess the merits of all the masks, as well as the memories of all the people in Termina. This is the culmination of the characters you encounter, this being their will channeled into the player, one final combat to determine if the will of the player is truly stronger than the moon. This is what makes The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask a phenomenal piece of rhetorical media.